Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a really interesting puzzle within the Quran structure today. Why would a chapter celebrating this massive victory be placed right next to one describing a man's total downfall? Well, it turns out the answer tells us a powerful story about power, justice, and faith itself.
Okay, so let's get right into it. As you know, the chapters of the Quran, the surahs, aren't arranged chronologically, so it's always fascinating to see which ones are placed together. And this pairing is a big one, a chapter of victory followed immediately by a chapter of doom. It seems a little strange, right? But the reason behind it is an incredible lesson in leadership.
The source material for this explainer uses this beautiful analogy. It says that if we read each chapter all on its own, it's like we're plucking a single flower from this giant, intricate mosaic. Yeah, you can appreciate the beauty of that one flower, but you totally miss the masterpiece, the bigger picture it's a part of.
So let's look at that first flower, that first piece of the puzzle. We're talking about Surah Al-Nasr, the 110th chapter, which translates to the victory.
Now, this victory wasn't some sudden, overnight thing. It was the absolute peak, the culmination of 23 long years of struggle. We're talking about intense persecution, being exiled from your home, and fighting in over 100 battles. It was a really long, really difficult journey.
And here is where the story gets so interesting. At the absolute pinnacle of success, the Prophet Muhammad's reaction wasn't pride, it wasn't arrogance, it was profound humility. He rode into the very city that threw him out, not as a conqueror with his head held high, but as a humbled servant with his head bowed low. This single act is the key to understanding everything that comes next.
So you have this incredible moment of victory, defined by humility, and then boom! Right after it, the Quran hits you with this stark warning in the very next chapter, Surah Al-Masad.
And that placement, it's everything. Our source argues this is completely deliberate. It's a warning shot. Victory gives you power, for sure, but power can lead straight to arrogance. The Quran is basically saying, congratulations, you've won. Now be very, very careful.
And this point is just brilliantly illustrated by contrasting two people. On one side, you have the Prophet, whose response to success was humility and forgiveness. And on the other, you have his own uncle, Abu Lahab, who used his power and status for persecution and defiance. Two men, both with power, and two totally different paths.
This chapter basically walks you through the complete unraveling of Abu Lahab. It starts with his own curses against the Prophet and ends with a divine statement that all his power, all his wealth, all his status would be completely useless in saving him. His arrogance was his ruin, a perfect mirror image to the humility that defined true victory.
Okay, so we've got victory paired with humility and power paired with a warning against arrogance. So that begs the question, how do you stop power from corrupting? Well, the sequence gives us the answer. The core principle for building a just society.
I mean, what a powerful statement. After the Quran just finished showing the danger of unchecked power by using his own uncle as the example, the Prophet reinforces the principle here. Absolutely no one is above the law.
The message for this new community and for all its leaders couldn't be clearer. It does not matter if you're the Prophet's uncle or his own daughter. When it comes to the law, everyone is equal. This establishes a bedrock of impartial justice, where accountability is for everyone.
So, victory demands humility, and power demands justice. Okay, we get it. But why? What's the foundation for all of this? The next chapter in the sequence, Surah Ikhlas, gives us the theological bedrock.
And this is where the focus shifts entirely. We move from history and law to pure theology. The chapter asks the most fundamental question of all. To whom are we actually accountable? Because understanding the nature of that ultimate authority is what gives all the humility and all the justice its meaning.
And this chapter introduces a critical concept about God, a divine attribute, as-Samad. It's a powerful word. It means the self-sufficient, the absolute, the eternal, the one that everything else depends on, but who depends on absolutely nothing.
And this comparison really helps it click. I mean, think about us. We need air, we need food, we need water, shelter. The list is endless. Our entire existence is defined by our needs. As-Samad, on the other hand, describes a being defined by a complete lack of needs, an existence that is just completely different from our own.
So the being that we are ultimately accountable to is utterly unique. So unique you can't even come up with a metaphor or an example to describe him.
And that understanding, that's what makes humility non-negotiable. I mean, when faced with that kind of absolute reality, what possible room is there for human arrogance?
So when you step back and look at the whole mosaic, instead of just plucking out the individual flowers, this is the picture that emerges. These 3 chapters, in this specific order, tell one complete story. They give us a blueprint. Success has to be met with humility, power has to be checked by accountability, and both of those ideas are grounded in the theology of an absolute creator.
You know, this whole thing reminds me of a powerful verse from the Quran itself. The idea that all the oceans couldn't provide enough ink to write down God's words, it speaks to the incredible depth of this text. There are just layers upon layers of meaning. Just by looking at the specific placement of 3 short chapters, we've uncovered this profound narrative about leadership, justice, and faith. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other stories are hiding in plain sight, just waiting in the mosaic for us to find them?